Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the host of this podcast. During this episode, we will be talking with someone who I have really gotten to know over the last couple months, and I have grown very fond of. Celene Beth Olsen is one of my absolute sheroes. Celene is a trauma-informed mental health coordinator, independent filmmaker, mid-level television producer specializing in true crime, retired dancer and choreographer, and podcast host whose multidisciplinary background informs her holistic and empathetic approach to care in creative spaces. Raised in Park City, Utah, Olsen is a Latinx creative whose early connection to storytelling was shaped through movement, performance, and later film. Her 10 years of working and volunteering with the Sundance Film Festival fostered a lasting appreciation for indie film and its ability to hold emotional depth and social complexity. Olsen's professional journey spans true crime television, documentary filmmaking, and podcasting. She has hosted two true crime podcasts where she refined her voice as both a storyteller and investigative journalist. Her work, both behind the camera and in support roles, is grounded in lived experience and shaped by her training and practice as a trauma informed mental health coordinator. Celene, welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement podcast.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me and for your sweet, kind words. Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. It is an absolute honor to sit down and talk with you on this
Likewise.
podcast and to continue, amplifying your voice and amplifying your story because it's very deep, right? And
Hmm.
before we continue, I want to say that I will be adding a viewer discretion is strongly advised as topics in this podcast episode can be triggering to some audiences. Again, viewer discretion is advised due to talking about the topics of sexual assault and a number of other topics. So, Celene,
Yes.
without further ado, let's continue.
Yes. Let's do it.
So, let's start off by, walk us through who Celene is.
Oh no. Wow, that's a question. Who Selene is. Okay, well, everything that you just shared in my bio uh lays it out pretty well. But as a human being, I am a wife and a mother, first and foremost, the most important people in my life. Um, but I I really live in a space of story, if you will. Um, I absolutely love story. I eat, breathe, sleep it. Um, but I've always been an artist at the end of the day, above everything. Dance was my world, was my everything. Um, and I envisioned that's where my life was headed. I always envisioned myself as a performer. Um, but all of that started getting tucked away, I would say, by the point that, yeah, my trauma really started surfacing as I got older. And by the time I got to college, literally my second month in college at the University of Utah, I was drugged and raped in my dorm room. Um, and that moment reshaped just who Celine was before then. And literally everything that was happy and good in my life just really started tumbling. Um, I was dancing at the U and really thought that that's where my education was going to go as well. And life just plummeted. Um, I think about how I use the term survivor, um, and how I have allowed it to define me in the past. That's not who I am today in the present, as I have learned to heal and progress and become the person that I've been waiting to become. Um, and yeah, I live in so many different spaces, like I said, when it comes to story. But my true heart and passion is working with trauma survivors. Good hell. I don't want to start crying at all. So, what I mean by that, yeah, working in the true crime space. So, when people, typically know who I am, it's sometimes from that. But I really tried to kind of refine myself, learn all the life lessons that I needed to integrating into the entertainment industry. Um, I was self-taught, if you will, and then really had to refine and learn and grow as a filmmaker, as a television producer. Um, I skipped a lot of steps in my career, and merely by sheer dumb luck, to be flat out honest, on top of my hard work. I will say that. And I'm very proud of it. And I'm learning to be proud. That's something I think as a person who has CPTSI, which is complex. My gosh, I don't even want to cry right now. You know what? I'm not in the space to talk about that right now. But all I'm trying to say is I've dealt with a lot of shit. I've just juggled so much trauma in my life, a lot of lived experiences that I'm really sorting through, cleansing, if you will, as I have moved into this new role as a mental health practitioner, which is why, for you and I to just go off script for a second, because I just want to identify and address how you said that we have gotten to know each other really well over these last couple of months. And I attribute that to the vision that you have put out in the world at a time that I and so many needed it, still need it. Um, but integrating into this space as a mental health coordinator under the Association of Mental Health Coordinators, shout out. Um, they have changed my life, and it feels like I can help make a change. And I think that's where I've been struggling as an artist to find ways to do that. But I didn't have the language, I didn't have the education, I didn't have the knowledge. But what I did have was lived experience. Um, Working with the most amazing, incredible people I have ever met in my entire life. Um, the trauma survivors that have built community around me, um, and all in the name of storytelling for the most part. And there's times where it wasn't. I identify and hold so much space for trauma survivors as one myself. Um, and I'm learning to find the beauty in it, learning to be proud of my resilience, um, that I have stepped up when I thought life was going to be the end of me. Um, Almost 2 years ago, that suicide ideation really seeped in for me. So, this is to say that getting to where I'm at today was not a linear journey. I had to endure a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse within the industry. Um, and I started feeling like that was starting to shape me back in 2022 and 2023, um, breaking my silence against Billy Jensen from Jensen and Holes, The Murder Squad. In Rolling Stone in the summer of 2022, that was just like phase one of what I'm really going to have to deal with. And then phase two came with Ben Kissel from last podcast on the left, and uplifting survivors, um, his survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence. This is a person who had a fan base filled with men and people who show no mercy whatsoever, for my lived experience, as I contributed to that article, because the night that I was assaulted by Billy Jensen, it was a mere seconds later that I was sexually harassed and followed to my room, by Ben. And so I, during that tumultuous time in my life, in, like I said, in 2023, I was also just mere months of postpartum. I allowed people to get close to me that seemed like they had the best intentions for me, and they didn't. And they exploited me, and they exploited the other survivors. And I mean, the amount of trauma and abuse that I endured, during that phase, even when my lived experience wasn't even remotely close to the other survivors. However, um, it was a really scary time. And I was at my lowest, literally like at my lowest of lows. And then, as you said in my bio, I have been a part of the Sundance Film Festival, volunteering and working for them over the past decade. And every January, it was, a moment to heal, a moment to learn, to grow, to watch art and let it speak to me. Truly the greatest gift I think one of the greatest gifts in my life has been Sundance. And I get emotional because that's how my career was born. That's where my first feature documentary was born. And it has helped me so much in so many areas of my life. As shared, I grew up in Park City. I literally was a part of this lived, I'm saying lived experience because it has been in my life for so long. Um, and I will go into all that later, but I at least just want to uplift, um, that I got the greatest film education probably ever. I don't think I could ever go to a university and get the same education that I have received, um, through watching the most amazing and diverse and, the filmmakers that I have watched over the years, watching their careers grow and envisioning that for myself one day. Um, and especially seeing the Latinas, that has made me feel so seen, especially right now in this fucking country.
Celine, whenever I tell you that your story, your experiences, your feelings, your emotions are all completely valid, I feel
Yes.
that and you feel that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's listening is going to resonate very deeply with everything that you're saying. And I want to really hit on a lot of like your start in,
Mm-hmm.
getting into true crime.
Mm.
Obviously, it's not for everybody. And
No.
it's something that is, and I'm finding this out as I'm talking to survivors and I'm talking
Yes.
to, filmmakers like yourself, but also these are stories that deserve to be on those headlines. And the reason behind the rise of justice movement, the reason behind this podcast is to give that space to people's stories who do not reach the headlines. And
Hmm.
there's a lot going on in our country right now. There's a lot that's happening. There's a lot that, is being unheard of and untalked about because it's filled with like these other headlines that just keep
Hmm.
going.
Hmm.
And you broke your silence against the University of Utah in the fall of 2019, 1 year after Lauren McCluskey's murder on campus in 2018.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. So October 2018, I had just returned from filming out in the field for my first feature doc, which is previously titled Theodore, um, now Killing Theodore. And to throw it out there, it is your anti-Ted Bundy documentary. That's all I need to say right now. And I had just returned from Tallahassee, Florida, after Hurricane Michael had hit actively while we were flying in. Um, I met with one of the first officer on the scene at the Chi Omega House at Florida State University, where Ted Bundy unalived two sorority sisters and brutally attacked two others. And literally, I think it was within a day or two of us returning, and I was listening to um, that interview as I was transcribing it. And I lived on a busy street that was just a couple blocks from the U of U at this time. And I heard the waves and waves and waves of cars, of police cars, just zooming, just on both sides of my street. Um, and I knew something was wrong because they were headed to the U. And there had already been another murder that occurred a year prior. Chenwi Gua was unalived, not far from where Lauren was. And uh, so obviously I log on to Facebook, I think, and I see an active shooter is running loose around the U. And I feel sick to my stomach, obviously. And already one student deceased. So obviously I shut off for the night and I literally downloaded a police scanner so that I could listen, uh, so I could track where they were going if he was around. Like, even though I wasn't going to leave my house, that's just where my head was at because I did get an alert the year prior with Chen Wei. So, uh, really disgusting that I have had to have equally have that lived experience with the rest of the community. And just again, yeah, I won't even go into the gun issue right now. Anyhow, so I find out later in the evening that Lauren McCluskey was unalived by an ex partner. Um, but as the days continued and started to unfold, I find out the same fucking police department that did jack shit for me failed Lauren, a woman who went and reported stalking and extortion to the campus police over 20 fucking times. I wanted to just, I don't know, do something, but I sat with that. I sat with that for a year or a little less than a year. Um, and I was active on Twitter back then, and I started following Jill McCluskey, Lauren's mother, who was giving updates in real time, because the McCluskey family would eventually, um, obviously take the U to court, but they never saw their day in court. Um, However, I there was a day that Jill had tweeted about and critiquing the U of U, throwing out slogans and policies and, saying that things have changed and security has changed and they're victim forward, which is bullshit. Um, I wanted to stand in solidarity, and I briefly said, the U of U campus police failed me as well, um, and whatever I said. And she responded. I believe she retweeted it. And within like an hour, I had the U of U Title IX in my DMs and local press, um, asking me for my story. And I was like, what the fuck? What do you mean, my story? Excuse me? Um, and it was like, oh, no, no, no. I don't talk about this, like I'm giving this nugget just to, again, stand in solidarity, but no. Um, and over the course of time, I actually did speak with Jill, um, a conversation that I will never forget, that I hold near and dear to my heart. She is one of my heroes. Um, and what this family has endured is so horrific. And even though I didn't know Lauren, I have just learned so much about her. So many beautiful stories have been shared with me about her. Getting to be a part of the Lauren McCluskey Foundation, representing them in Utah last fall, especially during Domestic Violence Awareness Month coming up here in October. So, uh, Needless to say, Lauren has stayed with me, in that capacity, but equally identifying that where my body was harmed by another man, was only feet away from where another man thought he had the right to her life. And it makes me so mad, so mad. And I shed these tears because, like I said, my adoration for the McCluskey family, for the foundation, um, and all the amazing people that have been blessed in my life, like Nicole Noren, the director of Listen, the ESPN documentary about Lauren's story, which I highly recommend everyone to watch. Um, but it's an honor to be able to have walked beside this family, continue to uplift them. Um, they really are just some of the most incredible humans, and please remember Lauren.
And I think, keeping the stories alive is absolutely crucial, and
Hmm.
telling these stories because, again, one, a story can reach like a massive headline and then you give it like maybe like a week or so, it disappears because people
Yes,
stop talking about it. And the only time that
correct.
they really talk about these stories is whenever it's, relevant to ongoing conversation.
Yeah,
And something that's obviously left out of those headlines is survivor voices and survivor stories. And then also, those victims' families, of the people who were taken at the hands of a perpetrator and taken at the hands of senseless acts of violence. I want to
yeah.
point really quickly to the University of Utah. Um,
Mm.
they released they released reports as required by federal law. And in one report in 2023, it stated that rape cases are very high, 175 total cases in 2023 compared to 30 in 2022 due to one survivor reporting 150 rapes during the course of a multiple month relationship plagued by IPV or interpersonal violence. Essentially, they just literally pointed out the one survivor reporting on 150 rapes. That's pinpointing to one person instead of, taking accountability. The numbers also appear in
Hmm.
statistics for Cleary's dating violence category. Stalking cases also have increased significantly from 100 or to 117 from 69 in 2022 because the threshold for stalking in the Cleary Act different than that in Utah state code. Motor vehicle thefts have declined from 29 to 2022 to 7. Alcohol offenses have declined from 389 in 2022 to 239. But here's my thing. They I don't even have the words to describe what I'm thinking right now. So
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hear what your reaction to that 2023 crime report as reported by the University of Utah. And, Lauren McCluskey's case is one of very many that have happened on that college campus.
Correct.
And, the number of reported rapes obviously continue to skyrocket across campuses across the US. Um, with the direct attacks on the Department of Education and Title IX, we're potentially going to
Hmm.
see an even further increase. What is your thought about all of this?
That they're just filled with bullshit. I'm so sick of it. And they know that. We've had a very recent conversation. They know that. And I am fucking over it. Um, 2023, and I'm here to tell you in 2025, nothing's changing. Like, sure, they have implemented very small changes here and there, but at the end of the day, it's the same bullshit that I had to endure 19 years ago. Lauren's case is the most extreme example, but like you said, her and Chenwi aren't the only ones who've been unalived. Like the amount of cases that come out of this university is bananas, but also understand and look at the bigger picture that I just touched on. And here's to say that domestic violence is a fucking crime. Um, and Utah is the leading state for this shit. And there are so many dynamics that play into that. But when we're talking about systemic and a university that should be doing what they can to support their students, their workers, just everybody. Like I said, getting those alerts to my phone, living so close to the school, and I just had to get used to it, normalize it. Something's fucking wrong, obviously. So it has been really beneficial for me to engage with the U at the times that I did. Because, like I said, Title IX reached out to me in 2019 and they fucking wasted my time, my money, my gas, all of it. Because at the end of the day, they were trying to figure out because I eventually decided to, yeah, you know what? Fuck them. I am going to break my silence against you. So I did. And I'm not backing down. I'm not stepping down. They know that. They went and told the press that they were going to do a whole ass investigation into my case to see what my qualms were. They never fucking did anything. It took forever for me to get my fucking rape report. And then they redacted my assailant's information. Excuse me. Like, how fucking, like, it's wild. It's wild to me that here are all these statistics and it's just lip service. They're a business. At the end of the day, they are just that, a business. They're falling right into place with this fascist staying in line, but whatever. So if you are somebody who's considering the University of Utah, I mean, do your research, but I'm not here to condone it. And my child for sure will not be attending the U.
Absolutely. Now is a time where like high school seniors start, searching for, what their
Hmm.
next destination is. So this is a crucial conversation to have, at this very moment, because a lot of our followers on Rise of the Justice Movement are high school seniors or they're college students or, in their early like years of their adulthood. So we're appealing to a lot of the younger generation. And, Celene,
Right.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, I want to backtrack a little bit and go back to 2020, where you shifted your advocacy work. Um, Walk me through what that shift into advocacy work was like, especially after, breaking your silence against the University of Utah in the fall of 2019, and then being sexually assaulted and harassed in 2019 by Billy Jensen and Ben Kissel. Walk me through shifting to that advocacy work and what that was like for you.
Yeah, great question. Um, who? Yeah, so I broke my silence September of 2019, and I did multiple interviews locally. Um, and my first interview that I did with the Salt Lake Tribune, um, yeah, I had never experienced re-traumatization before, and my body was so activated. Um, and that began to spiral me um, into a really difficult, dark space because I was also unmedicated, undiagnosed, um, didn't have the coping skills that I have today. Um, and then I'm still reeling, obviously, from all of this in October. And then November 2019 is when I was invited to a true crime festival, if you will, in Washington, D.C. And yeah, my whole incident went down at the Watergate Hotel. And again, the spiral continued and really like just I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I was becoming so disconnected from Theodore, my project, because I was starting to endure secondhand vicarious trauma without even knowing what the hell that was until this past summer. Um, and I felt helpless, but I felt like the only way that I can maybe help myself feel like I'm doing something is maybe I start helping survivors. And at the time, I was very active within the My Favorite Murder community. Um, yeah, which I am no longer a part of or affiliated with or want to be. Um, but with that being said, that's where truly like my connection to Billy came into play. Um, and so while I was still reeling from everything that had happened in December, uh, he was still engaging with me. He was still grooming me, if you will. Let's just call it out what it was. Um, and again, and it was just like, what do I do? I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I need to do something. So within that community, I had learned of a wonderful nonprofit called Wasatch Forensic Nurses, and they are sexual assault nurse examiners that will travel to the survivor and perform the rape kit. Um, they have options. So I learned that they were looking for volunteers and individuals that would be willing to undergo these kits and for their nurses to train. And I was like, okay, I'll start here. And I have had over 10 performed on me. So I've had a lot of dye, on me, pictures, the amount of, yeah, just all the things. Just I have been probed and in the name of solidarity, even though I didn't take one for myself, it was my goal actually to become an advocate, a sexual assault advocate, which I did do um, shortly thereafter. And but because of COVID and the height of the pandemic, I learned that I was pretty immunocompromised. But my goal was that I wanted to become an advocate to be the liaison um, for survivors coming in, getting a kit performed, and me engaging with law enforcement. And because of my um, journey in my early filming days, I was working and interviewing a lot of law enforcement. And so I felt like I could communicate with them and be able to be calm and regulated. And yeah, so essentially after that, I decided to get certified, but shifted and did their, I went to another amazing community center in Salt Lake, the Rape Recovery Center, and I volunteered on their crisis line. And I did that for about a year. And then it really just took off. But I know we're going to talk about where it also shifts, so I'm going to pause there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that you volunteered for the rape crisis line during the pandemic, because obviously there was a very high need for that, obviously at
Very
that
much.
time.
Hmm.
And I can't even imagine some of the stories that you heard. And because
Yes.
it's very, that vicarious trauma is something that, we don't really talk about a lot, especially in like true crime and like survivor
Hmm.
stories. And
Hmm.
we don't think about that. Um,
No.
one of the things that you did, you had a previous podcast before, your true crime in Hollywood. Um, you covered the Lori Vallow Daybell case,
Yeah.
and you
Hmm.
stated that you'll never do that again. Why is that?
Yeah. Um, that was 2020. That was the same year. Yeah. So I just want to preface top line. It's not that I am not proud of my work. I am, but I would have done things drastically differently, um, or not done it at all. And that's where I would be leaning today. But with that being said, again, I was still trying to figure out ways to fulfill that creative need in me, especially living alone and being isolated by myself during the pandemic. I really needed something, and I was missing filming and the whole bit. But I received an amazing opportunity from a production company, and they were like, "Hey, we are looking to shift into podcasting. Um, you can totally craft like a whole concept. Like, is there a case that you could follow, maybe in real time, maybe that's local to you?" And JJ and Tylee's picture were plastered everywhere in Utah. The case obviously had very close ties to Utah and Idaho, Arizona, Hawaii. Um, and when I learned that JJ was on the spectrum, um, that hit too close to home. Um, I have a sibling on the spectrum, um, and and so it was really resonating with me, and it was bothering me that these kids had not been found, and Lori was being Lori, and such aloof. And I chose to shift my focus into it, and it was a lot. It was a it was just the darkness of the whole case, on top of looking at all the people involved, there were so many layers, so many family members intertwined. The uh, Mormon LDS like ties to the whole case as well. So that was also kind of a little bit of an uncharted territory for me, even though I was raised in Utah. But in Park City, the majority are Catholics and those of the Jewish faith. So, and don't get me wrong, there were LDS individuals in the community, but I would not say that my childhood experience is quite normal. So with that being said, I didn't have like a full scope and understanding of the religion. So I did have to do a bit of digging in there. And then going undercover for it. And it was the moment that the kids were found. So when I decided to take on the project, the kids had not been found yet. The the week that I was announcing it, the kids were found. And I had to go back and I had to start over a little bit. Um, but it was on that day that the kids were found that um so that morning I had received a text from a previous best friend of Lori's, April, and I absolutely love and adore April with all of my heart and soul. Um, and she texted me that the kids may have been found. And the news hadn't confirmed anything yet, nothing. Like, I believe that I think I turned on the TV and then that's when I saw that things were starting to pick up at Chad Daybell's property in Rexburg, Idaho. Um, and yeah, and it was them. And the way that they were found is the most horrendous, atrocious, unfathomable, just makes me so angry as a mother. Um, I can't even imagine what those kiddos endured. And it hurts. It hurts so much because I got to, just like Lauren, I got to learn so much about Tylee and JJ. I was gifted one of Tylee's bracelets that she had made that had an owl on it, and I have an owl tattoo. And owls mean a great deal to me. So, and she loved Hamilton so much. And when I did the episode honoring JJ and Tylee, I wanted to honor her in that capacity. So, I hold such a near and dear place in my heart for them. That goes without saying. Same with Charles Vallow, same for Tammy Daybell. Um, the amount of lives that came crashing down for so many in this case is it's just horrific. And I've seen it firsthand. Um, and by the end of the point that I stopped doing episodes, they Lori finally was arrested along with Chad. And I did have the opportunity to cover it, the trials and whatnot. And I sat with myself and was just like, no, I can't. I can't get myself to sit through this trial. I can't see images of JJ, of Tylee like that. I don't want to remember them like that. Um, and the secondhand, again, and the vicarious trauma that I experienced through that entire project was real. But like I said, I don't, I'm not upset that I did it at the end of the day. But I had to learn a lot from it. And like I said, if anything, it was all for the victims. And none of it was ever uplifting Lori or Chad. And but I sincerely hope just the people that were involved who, have had time and space to grow, to grieve, to hopefully be on a healing path. I wish them nothing but the best. And I hope that they're healing. And I know how long they have been dealing with this, especially in the media, for all the family, everyone. And yeah, so that's just my cautionary tale to anyone considering covering a case similar to it, or really any case at all, especially if, you just see it as content and it really shouldn't be.
Absolutely. I think learning about that case was probably the most horrific that I've probably ever read about. And I think back to the first time I heard about it,
Yeah.
and it brings on like a whole world of emotions. Yeah, and it brings
Yeah.
on a whole world of, like religious trauma. It brings on a
Yes.
whole world of just harrowing details. And these are the most horrific. Um, this is one of the most complex and most horrific cases in our country's history.
Absolutely.
And how deep it goes and how complex it is and how many different
Hmm.
angles are brought to it.
Hmm.
And I want to shift, kind of into talking about some of the like true crime television and unscripted series that you've worked on,
Yeah.
including the Playboy murders, which my mom personally loved. We actually just
Oh,
watched that.
oh,
Um,
nice.
and then you also worked on In Pursuit with John Walsh, and you got
Mm.
to know the Walsh family, and then
Hmm.
also the real CSI Miami. So not that bullshit that we see on TV. This is like the legit, like actual,
Yeah,
it,
the
it brings it
forensics.
it brings it to more
Hmm.
perspective. So walk me
Hmm.
through like the Playboy murders, working with John
Mm.
Walsh and like how it's all
Hmm.
interconnected.
Yeah. Um, Let me start with In Pursuit because that goes first. Um, and anybody who is a listener of my podcast knows how much I love the family that is the Walsh family on top of my amazing, incredible field team that I was a part of and blessed and honored to be a part of. But when I got that call to join In Pursuit, truly, like, I used to sneak watching America's Most Wanted as a child. I knew exactly who John Walsh was. Obviously, I became familiar with Adam Walsh's case, which is another just great tragedy in this country. And I know for so many, especially when people find out, that I did this series, they immediately bring up Adam. And I cannot gush more over the Walsh family because taking something as hard as that and I really recommend to people listening to Callahan Walsh's episode. Sorry for the shameless plug. Callahan's episode on my podcast because he goes into great detail of how John and the family came to be of this journey for them and uplifting so many families and then chasing fugitives and bringing justice to so many. It's so incredible. So when I got that call, that I knew, I was like, this isn't just another job. This isn't a gig. Like this is this is going to mean something. This is going to shift something. Like I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going to happen, especially because they were like, yeah, you're being assigned to Callahan's field team. And it was with a great honor and deep respect and so much gratitude for the amazing Rachel Gibberman, who was my senior producer on a previous series that we worked on together called Exhumed, which is also another wonderful body of work. And when she asked me this is somebody who had been working with the Walsh family for almost 15 years. She started on the tip line at America's Most Wanted, and her friendship, with Callahan and with the family, like I knew this isn't just a normal call. This is like, I've got to take this job, and okay, I'm going to be going and chasing bad guys around the country. Yes, please. But it was hard because I was still in my first year of marriage, and my husband was like, dude, no, go. Like, you've got to do this. So it was a wild summer. And I will just say that I worked truly alongside the most incredible field team. I've never, ever been a part of a crew that just gets it. You know, I had already been somewhat self-taught, right? Like working with trauma survivors, but I kept trying to refine it a bit more and observing Rachel and her producing style and what her words of wisdom was to me was so profound. But then on the other hand, I'm watching Callahan and his leadership and watching how he's communicating with the trauma survivors, the care, the need, the space, like in my pre-production meetings. I mean, even when I'm working remotely, like you still feel it, even though you still have the chaos and the madness of actually producing a show and creating these, because y'all, it's hard as fuck. Um, but I love it. It taught me so much in so many ways. And like I said, being boots on the ground and chasing this in real time, it means something to all of us. So, I will share that I don't have the exact number today, and I should have texted Callahan before, but I would love to figure out, I don't know, I'll make a post on it or something. But the amount of captures that have come from In Pursuit, and not just nationally, but internationally, and the tips that we get, um, to be able to bring justice, like I said, to these families, to these communities that have been sitting in fear, right? Like these are some of the most horrific cases. The very first shoot that we did was on a serial rapist. I mean, and then on top of that, I went to Orlando to film, and at the sheriff's department, and Pulse was not far from there, and their entire walls were filled with artwork from the community honoring the Pulse victims. Um, that 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 does something that hits different. Um, Especially because we were such a diverse group of people, and we all come from different backgrounds and lived experiences, and it resonates. And then fast forward, we're in Florida again, and we are at the Broward County Sheriff's Department, and that is the department who oversaw Parkland. Um, so again, it's feeling that when you enter already, we're covering completely different cases, but being surrounded by such pivotal, historical, painful reminders of the failures of this government and this country, it's maddening. But again, it was like we are doing something. So I had learned, in real time on the podcast, that I had a capture that I didn't even know about. And it was in Callahan's episode, and it was, like I said, please listen to it because we talk about what the case was, and it involved children. It was my first experience covering a story about sextortion involving minors, um, and my anger and rage that I had for this particular individual, Adrian Farios. Yeah, finding out from Callahan that I had a capture was amazing. And just recently, I will share, I got a phone call as I'm literally walking out with my family, walking onto Malibu Beach. Cal's like, give me a call, give him a call. He starts ask me if I remember, so and so that we worked with and at the FBI, and da da da, da, and lets me know that we just got another capture from our season, and this was a case that was long, long time coming. I'm not positive if that individual is back um, on land, so I don't want to give anything away, but I will just say that, you know, like I said, that's a legacy in its own. So yes, please everyone listen to those episodes. And I also interview a lot of my field team as well on the podcast. So you can also hear us geek out and learn a lot about what goes on behind the scenes. And then literally right after In Pursuit, I signed on to the Playboy Murders, which was such a obviously a drastic shift. And I had, as a millennial girl, as I'm so many millennial girls, especially elder millennials, um, and our fascination and, with Playboy and how much it was marketed to us back then. So it was kind of like this full circle moment again, just like it was with In Pursuit. And boy, did I learn a lot. And there was so much that I learned that never got to the show. I learned about cases, I learned about people, I learned about the history of Playboy. And I will share just one thing. There was one episode that we covered a story on the murderer was the Playboy previous bunny. And she had been one of like the first, like of its time. This was a fairly older case. Carol, I believe was her name. And we were exchanging letters. I let her know that we were interested in covering her story. Um, and the story was so complex, very complex. And um, but I had connected with her best friend, and she was a hoot. And I absolutely adored her. Um, and, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of Carol's story. I learned so much history and context. And it was just a reminder again of just finding humanity where you can, but also questioning the system, questioning things. I mean, again, I can never say or know what is true, in a case or anything like that, but it was just a reminder, like I said, that I may never know, but I also know how much the system fails women and things are misconstrued, especially in the media, which is something I'm very passionate about that I know we'll get into later. Um, so yeah, so that was Playboy. And then the real CSI Miami. Talk about just the most badass way of learning actual forensic science. And the difficult part, though, with that was examining the cases that required that forensic, right? Um, and albeit it was Miami and it was Florida, there was plenty for us to review as I was a research producer on the series. And um, like I said, just understanding what actually goes into solving these cases, how in depth it can go. Often we just hear about like touch DNA now, right? It goes so much deeper than that. And, you know, figuring out how to, you know, craft this story while equally uplifting the science, but, holding that space for the survivors themselves. um True crime's complex, right? Like there's just so many layers to it. There's so many things that can coexist, when we're talking about law enforcement and of all the things. But that's kind of where my neutral head usually comes from, is that I've had to operate in so many spaces of learning about the systems that I know are built against me and my community and so forth. But I also know the good that can come out of it, if that makes sense. Um, so yeah, so it just, again, and I did, oh no, I did the real murders of LA and OC in between that. Yeah, I thought they were consecutive. Never mind. But yes, so those are my spiels about those three series.
Thank you for sharing that. And on the because I believe the Playboy Murders series is still going, correct?
To my understanding, yes, but I am
Because
no longer a part of
because
it.
they're getting ready to cover, or they just covered the story of, I always butcher the name, but Kim
Oh,
Fatorini,
yes, 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 yes. I know what case you're talking about.
which
Yeah. Okay.
they're covering that, and
Mm,
there's not a lot of movement around it. There's a petition that was started, to reopen the case, and scrolling through social media and learning, the social media is such a unique, um, tool that we have in our society now, where you can follow the hashtags and you see everything that people are talking about, and you know, um, and in thinking about that, you shifted your content to focus heavily on, essentially like supporting trauma survivors and trauma-informed education for audiences, engaging with the true crime in real time. And you also collaborate with us, the Rise Up
yes.
Justice Movement, but also MTMV, Me Too
Yeah.
Many Voices. Um, and then also just like deconstructing the true crime as a genre and demanding the real change in how the
Yeah.
content is approached across all platforms, which led you into your most recent journey. And I would love for you to really hit on this, as a mental health coordinator,
Hmm.
going through the training, which has to be
Hmm.
very detailed. Can you explain why mental health coordinating is deeply important in like the film and, just in the film industry and just in entertainment?
Ugh, what a question. Yes. All right, I'll start top line, I believe, from your first question. Yes, my content has officially shifted, y'all. So sorry. It wasn't like I was sharing much greatness before that. No, not to say. But I will say, in this day and age, in this moment in time, um, I was becoming so frustrated with the world, as I am frustrated every single day with the world, especially our country. Um, And I kept thinking to myself, like, I know I'm sharing things to my story, but should I be louder? Should I push myself? And I attribute that to you and to Rise Above Justice, also to MTMV. Lauren, shout out. It's it's so crucial for community support. And we are all experiencing collective trauma right now. And what I mean by that is that we are witnessing and experiencing things that we have never dealt with in the way that we're dealing with it today. Meaning, I have to give this example from my post literally this morning. When we're talking about this Charlie Kirk video that was circulating and is still circulating all over social media, a lot of us cannot consent to that, right? Because not only are news stations, sharing these videos and these images, but there's nowhere for us to consent out of that. And again, like, how much trauma we are enduring right now, it's so crucial that we start having these conversations, because we are so ill informed. We are not trauma informed as a society, and it's failing us, and it's causing so much more harm and truly with trauma-informed care and support that is violence prevention. Um, so when I decided to, okay, I'm gonna like start tiptoeing a little bit into this, and I started bringing up things that were coming up for me, and I will attribute that directly to the Miss Sherry Papini. Um, and I watched the HBO documentary that came out earlier this summer. And in that moment, uh, learning Sherry's story while listening to her therapist, who she has been working with extensively for the last 5 years, and then another trauma expert. I cannot remember her name. But between the three of them, that's where I was focused in terms of story, if that tells you anything about my transition as a mental health coordinator. Um, but with that being said, because I already was in my early education of my certification, um, I was able to identify and recognize what was being explained to me. And I became so flustered and frustrated that even after people watched it, they were still victim shaming and blaming Sherry. And look, y'all, like trauma is so complex. When we are talking about abuse areas and cycles, so complex. I am not here to share Sherry's story. You need to hear Sherry's story from her or from her book. And the reason I believe Sherry is because she is speaking her truth and I can tell. And I also know and validate and can comprehend what her therapist has shared. And that was so vulnerable. And I commend her for allowing that to be shared with the world. That's wild, you know? Um, and such a beautiful gift to be able to have that support. Um, and and understanding that the media is failing us. Okay. I have to call this out. My initial um lens, if you will, of critically analyzing media came from college. I didn't go into dance. I went and transitioned into speech communications with an emphasis on intercultural studies. So essentially, it was public speaking with critical analysis of the media, with a sharp focus on docs and music and film. Um, but with that being said, I as a documentarian myself, I always strive in a space of education and providing education. And now that I have entered into this next phase of my career path as a mental health coordinator, certified, might I add. Thank you. I received my certification this week. I would like to share um, because I didn't know how long it was going to take me. So, anyway, but with that being said, as I started observing, again, your content and really becoming frustrated about the way that people take the media as truth, as Bible, as that is it. They get it as a trauma survivor, as a producer, as an independent filmmaker, okay, as an advocate, and now a mental health coordinator. You are being fed bullshit. It's all bullshit, okay? You are listening to somebody who has gone through documents after documents of case files. Okay. I know how big case files can get. And oh boy, let me tell you. So I also now know as a mental health practitioner that I can identify where trauma responses live and begin. And that was what I saw in Sherry. And so I made a video about Sherry and on TikTok and shared it to Instagram. And the comments on TikTok compared to Instagram were very drastic and different. And I was like, okay, um, but it's making people think, because I would respond to people when they were like, "Oh, she's just got you under her spell," or whatever the verbiage is, and it's always just like, "Come on, all right, you know what? I will engage, but I'm going to engage being trauma informed and try to give you language and understanding of what that is." So as I was actively in my cohort, which was a very intensive and extensive 10-week cohort, for 3 hours every weekend, and showing up in my coalition of artists and advocates and just the most incredible humans that I could also join and be in community in. Needless to say, the president and co-founder Amanda Edwards of the association, um, just yeah, like all of you, and I'm including you, Zachary, like everyone, just kind of gave me the spark and the courage, and recognizing that maybe I can explain these things in ways that are simple, refined, and they'll want to keep engaging with it and they want to keep learning about it. Um, while I'm not going to share too much in detail, while I was doing the my entire summer to this cohort, on the other side, I was speed running to finish my first short documentary. And there's a reason it was on a short timeline. There is a reason that I had no choice but to do it on a short timeline. Um, but it involved unpacking my trauma in a way that could be used as education. Um, and it was by far one of the hardest artistic moments of my life. But it's done, it's over with, kind of. And yeah, so with that being said, I started realizing, okay, I can start doing this in real time. And by collaborating with Rise Above Justice, this will now give you dual language to the content that is being curated among this community, right? Because I think for all of us that have been in it, and as our voices continue to grow and we reach more people, we're giving a little bit of everything, right? We're calling for awareness. We are calling things out, but we are also uplifting survivors. We are also uplifting the crucial moments in time that we need to remember. We need to understand right now. But we are also forgetting at the end of the day that we are all just humans. This is the problem. We are all humans. And what does that mean? We 1010% know we are not perfect people. And I also know there is literally no one on this planet Earth who goes unscathed with trauma. Nobody. I could not, I mean, there are levels to it, but like I shared about collective trauma, we've experienced it. Okay. So, with that being said, I recognized like this week that I haven't seen any content really curated for, um, gun survivors on my feed, at least, and providing resources, support, finding validation in their lived experiences that many of us don't know, what that may be or feel like. Um, but again, it's all about feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling validated. I felt really vulnerable the other day sharing where I was at about Charlie Kirk. I have been frustrated and pretty angsty this past week. I've been very spicy, extra spicy than I normally am, um, because of seeing people who I have deep love and admiration for, uh, uplifting this person in a way that is so offensive to me in my lived experience as a brown woman in America today and every day. And I don't see you speaking up the same ways about ICE, about those kiddos who've lost their parents, whose parents are imprisoned, being tortured, being raped. Where's your humanity in that? What about the babies in Gaza? I, it breaks me. And it breaks me in a way that like reminds me that again, we are all just humans. And how do I help? How do I show up? What can I do? What gifts can I give to the world so that my daughter lives in a world that is getting better, that has more language, that has more understanding and empathy and everything that we so desperately need right now as a country? Like, I'm almost embarrassed to be, no, I am embarrassed to be American at times because what the hell is this, right? But I also know I am not in the minority feeling that way. So I digress. Um, but with that being said, obviously going through the training, I also had to do a capstone project. So I already have been doing MHC work on a documentary, and it equally is teaching me so much. And doing it in real time, recognizing all the areas that I can support, show up in the ways that I needed that support when I was in the thick of filming Theodore. Um, and then being able to have my own mental health coordinator, Danny Beth, um, serve for my short was a world of a difference. I finally could see the benefits from both sides, right? And I think that was the beauty in it, is that not only am I learning how to do it, but I'm receiving it. I'm receiving that care. I'm receiving that support. So between Danny Beth and my therapist, my brain was operating in a safer space than it would have been had I not had those tools and resources and support systems. So when I decided to become a mental health coordinator was earlier this spring. I'm going to quickly take a drink of water really quick. And I had been introduced to Amanda Edwards and Michelle Backey, and these two incredible humans um, really offered so much education about mental health coordination. And it was so profound and transformative that I was just like, oh my God, how do I like get trained? Do I become one? Do I just do like workshops and then like I'll have more trauma informed sets? Like I didn't know where I wanted to go after learning this information. But then I decided to do a community Zoom where it was kind of like a Q&A. And after that, I was like, yeah, this is where I need to go. This is what I need to do because art is still my heart and soul. Art is still my self-prescribed medication. It feeds me, it nurtures me, it is every fiber of my being. I am a dancer first and foremost, all day, every day. That's where my artistry begins, is through my musical and physical movement. Um, and then I transition into storyteller. And because I had that growth as a dancer and moved into choreographer and then had to retire my body to it, um, but have had it with me during a lot of the really difficult years that I had in the midst of filming Killing Theodore. So, with that being said, operating in this industry now, not just on a micro level as an indie filmmaker, but as a mid level producer, I don't know if I genuinely want to go back to producing in the television space because of what I observed and the unethical behaviors, manipulations. The last series I did completely 180'd my entire vision and trajectory, I feel, in the television space for true crime. Although I do know for a fact that there are series and shows that do show up ethically, or are making the strides to. Not everyone is perfect, but there are a lot of good that can outweigh the bad. However, um, it feels like a much safer and really unified space for me to be transitioning into MHC work full time, while equally still being filmmaker Celene and podcaster Celene. Um, but that goes back to your first question, by the way. Like I said, I'll do a full circle transition of all of this. But with that being said, uh, mental health coordination, what is it? So this is a way for the entertainment industry to shift into a more ethical, compassionate, sustainable storytelling space, right? Just as you shared and so graciously with your audience of providing a content note at the beginning of this episode and your prior episodes. So showing up for care for your audience, that is trauma informed care, right? And I love that. And I love that I now have the tools, the education, the knowledge, the opportunity of learning from these individuals who are doing it in real time and being able to ask them questions. So every week we would have a guest speaker, um, again, sharing their lived experience as an MHC. What specialties are they a part of? And I mean, from Broadway to feature films to television, I mean, X, Y, and Z across the board, including live performance. So even integrating into that space for, um, those who are going on the road with Beyonce or Taylor Swift. Like, again, mental health coordination is not just one isolated thing. And I think there are some assumptions about this role that comes with the stigma of mental health. And then you hear the term coordinator. So people automatically think like mental health police. No, not at all. I would put us on par with intimacy coordinators, and how transformative they have been, but also understanding that they are still refining their craft within the industry as well. um and we can coexist, and there is some tiny overlap in those areas between us, but it's also again refining our scope of work between the two. But at least with mental health coordination, for me as an artist, as a producer, as a filmmaker, as a survivor, as a silence breaker, um podcast host, I see the benefit in all of it, all of it. And I love that. And I hope that this is something that becomes embedded in the industry. I, being part, like I said, of this coalition of artists and, you know, leaving the industry better than how it found us ultimately, um, that is important, and I'm just so elated that this is where I'm going, and it's a fucking challenge. It's hard work. It's so hard already, and I love it. And it is challenging me. It is making me think outside the box. It's giving me the tools and language to explain it to these audiences that we are engaging with in our community, Zachary, right? And like I said, as much little gifts that I can provide to the world when it is just drowning in chaos and violence and everything under the sun that is the darkness that is around us, just a beacon of hope, something, anything that I can do to, like I said, make this world a safer and better place for all of the communities that I love and protect and advocate for. And this is only me just getting started. So I hope you're all fucking ready for what's about to come next.
Speaking of which, that leads into my next question of what is next for Celene, as an artist, as an advocate, as a podcast host, and now as a mental health practitioner, you're going to do some badass things. And I can already tell you, and you're going to be calling me or texting me like, oh my God, guess what just happened? And, like
Yeah.
that's just a relationship that you and I have built over, this
Yeah.
last, several months ever since, the
Mm-hmm.
election and, me reaching out to
Mm-hmm.
you and then, coming on your podcast. That
Yes.
was the first time that I shared some like very deep things about my own personal
Yes.
stories. So
Yes.
again, shameless plug. If you're listening, be sure to also go and listen
Please.
to True Crime in Hollywood, available on all the streaming platforms as well. And
Mm-hmm.
what is
Oh my
next?
gosh.
What's happening?
Yeah. So as I shared, yes, I completed my first short film titled The Sundance Kid, and it's essentially a visceral meditation of a Latinx true crime filmmaker. Again, I was raised in Park City, and I just spent a decade behind the scenes of the Sundance Film Festival. Um, and so obviously I submitted that to Sundance, and who knows? I don't what will happen. Strictly because it's Sundance and it is so hard and it's so competitive. It is the film festival of all film festivals. It's the first one that kicks off the year. And Sundance has my heart. Like I shared, I could not have received a better film education, especially when we're talking about documentaries. Um, the amount of filmmakers, artists, the people that I've worked with, that I have met through community. My gosh, like my heart is so big. And knowing that I closed that chapter out, introducing NASA Plus and Sundance, uh, Institute and the festival, like just that whole partnership coming together and being able to put those two hands together was the best way for me to leave that journey. And I just, yeah. So anyway, so if people do not know or have not heard, this next year will be the final year that it is in Park City, because they are relocating to Boulder, Colorado, which I'm so elated for. Um, and and yeah, and I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna challenge myself to, I need to make art right now. And I didn't know what it was going to be. I mean, that's literally what making a documentary is. And there's an amazing quote from Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, um, saying something about like, you know, you're essentially filming something and you don't know what you're making. And that is the truth. Um, I was able to compile, this was all shot through my phone, by the way. Um, all of these images and videos, it's more videos, if you will, of images that are viewed from my lens as a parkite, a child running around Park City, running up and down Main Street, trying to find all the celebrities with my little autograph book and, whatchamacallit. Oh my gosh, I'm already getting old. Your little cameras, disposable cameras, good Lord. Um, so, like I said, my childhood was very different, and I acknowledge that, and it was rooted in privilege. Um, Although I didn't have the same privileges as, my friends or, those who I went to school with. But I still reaped a lot of those benefits, I will say. So, with that being said, I'm really dedicated to shifting my focus now into my own work, into my own art. Um, and needless to say, I'm going back to my filmmaker roots and I'm ready to start doing it again. And that is strictly because I have mental health coordinators and I am a mental health coordinator. Um, and I can do it. I can do it. I can do it safely. And it's such a beautiful aha moment. Like I shared, my MHC for the Sundance Kid, Danny Beth, showed up for me. And even though she feels like she didn't do a ton, she has no idea because when you're getting so in depth and you're creative, and like I said, digging through my trauma and trying to refine it and explain it in short form and to do all the things, it was a lot. And I'm so proud of myself for, and Danny Beth for doing this on such a crunch. And that was strictly because I learned of the Boulder move in the spring. Really, all of this was like fully ready to go the night I went to the opening night of Cowboy Carter tour in LA at SoFi Stadium. And I will say from that point on, I was like, oh, hell yeah, I can make a short film in this amount of time. Beyonce can do this, I can do that. So, yes, I will be transitioning back into my filmmaker era. And it is my goal to not stop. I am fully dedicated to picking up Killing Theodore and finally getting this thing done. And I'm sure people are like, another Ted Bundy documentary. No, 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 no. So all the way down. You think I'm just giving you another Ted Bundy documentary? Fuck to the no, I'm not. Um, and I'm so glad that I waited, that I properly disengaged with my project. I needed to. I needed to process my trauma with it. I needed to decompress. A lot happened behind the scenes. Just being in such a dark space that is Ted Bundy's mind, um, that I did have to be in, um, willingly and unwillingly, I guess I should say. So I am just dedicated to, like I said, really educating the masses as best as I can. I feel like I have all of my film tools and inspiration that needed to get me to where I'm at today in this moment in time, which again I attribute to Sundance. And that's where that lane will start. But the podcast, True Crime in Hollywood, a personal tale, my absolute favorite thing that I have done in terms of like almost, well, how long did I have it go for? Almost 9 months. But I took a break over the summer, obviously, because of my cohort. But I will announce here that the plan is to actually pick season 3 back up um, early next year. And the reason being is because I am prioritizing my mental health and because I had to do TSK on such an accelerated short timeline, the compounded trauma on top of processing our collective trauma um, is a lot. And then to be mothering and wifing as well. And I haven't taken a break, I think, since the day I started Theodore, which was the night that someone told me, like, yeah, go for it. So, yeah, I'm finally taking a decent little break, a little chunk. However, you may hear a special little few episodes sprinkled coming out. So be sure to follow my social media or follow True Crime in Hollywood on Insta. And yeah, so that will be that lane. And then mental health coordination. I love it so much. So I am officially available to be hired. And my website will be going up here very soon. That will be celenebethmhc.com. And you'll be able to learn about, again, what it is that I'm doing in this space as a mental health practitioner within the entertainment industry. It is my goal and priority to stay in this space for the next, well, we'll see how many years I can go, but I'm dedicated to it, meaning that I am actively doing this primarily um, for the time being. So because I know what comes with this work is also why I'm taking that break. Mm. And then, sorry, I had to take another drink of water. But after spending some time in this in the documentary space, um, I am my goal and my hope is that I do transition more to start dipping my toe into feature film, um, which obviously, again, with the Sundance background, I have an equal deep love and appreciation. Well, I shouldn't say equal, but I do have a very deep love and appreciation for feature narratives. Um, and I do hope to MHC in that space along with television. There are so many amazing and beautiful art that comes from television, especially scripted. And I would love to be able to show up in those spaces. Like I just saw Big Little Lies is coming back, so holla if you need your girl. Um, no, but like sincerely, I'm just excited to enter into that um, artistry and really provide that care and support because good hell, y'all, like those roles. I had to do a project, a group project. Shout out to Team Euphoria, and we broke down Euphoria, just Rue's character by the amazing Zendaya, and now with the education and the knowledge that I have in so many areas, from suicidality to eating disorders to substance use. It comes with great responsibility and a badge of honor, and being able to support artists taking on such roles like this. I'm currently rewatching 6 Feet Under with my husband right now, and the amount of times that we yell mental health coordinator, mental health coordinator, mental health coordinator is just like it's our new favorite thing. um but it makes me, it gives me butterflies, because that means I know how I can show up for them and be able to get them into a safe space because our bodies do not know that it's fake. And that is, again, what I shared on this post early this morning about, like secondhand trauma and vicarious trauma. Um, and it's so important to understand and recognize that people do have to go into some really hard places to get those performances out. Um, and now that we can do this in a way that is rooted in trauma informed care and support, um, I see the need. And same thing for live performance. Like I said, Beyonce, you can call me Mama Tina, reach out. I think it's so important for dancers as well. Also living in the dance space, I literally helped build Millennium Dance Complex, Salt Lake City, um, right from when it opened. And I was the director of operations at one point, and that's actually where I met one of my amazing cohort members, who I am going to shout out, which is the Allison Stoner. Allison, they just released their book, and also in the name of trauma informed care, and as equally as a mental health practitioner, um, I've just watched Allison do the most incredible work of educating the masses about MHC work while being so brave and vulnerable and equally sharing their story, and doing so in a way that again gives people the language and understanding why we are so needed. And for Allison to show up in the child actor space, oof, like I can't even right now. Um, and and funny enough, Allison and I, we met during my time with MDC SLC. And so that first day of the cohort, and I see their face, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, did we just choose the same career pathway? So it was a heartwarming moment, and they've even been doing some amazing MHC work behind the scenes also to set me up for support and care for True Crime in Hollywood, A Personal Tale, which I also you get to utilize my MHC here soon, Zachary. Miss Danny Beth will be stepping in. So again, just I could go on and on and on and on and on about MHC work. But I'm just saying that if you are in these spaces and you are listening or you have the ability to uplift, I will even throw out authors. I have my first meeting with an author, Miss Laura Donovan, to talk about how I can support as an MHC while she is actually going through and writing her story. And I just, again, I see the need, I see the care. I just want to uplift and put an MHC warm blanket around everyone right now in the industry. So that's where I'm headed next.
Celene, hearing you and just hearing how excited you are about mental health coordinating, because it is deeply important. Your mental health is just as important as
Yeah,
your physical health, especially in
yeah.
these vulnerable industries like the entertainment industry and like modeling and like
Mm-hmm.
all of these incredibly talented individuals.
Mm-hmm.
They're vulnerable, and
Exactly.
they put themselves in these weird predicaments, and people prey upon them. I mean, look what happened with like Nickelodeon, and there's
Yes,
just there's just so much to unpack there,
well,
and
and I'll go as far as, because I really do want to uplift um this. One second. I'm looking up the name of the film because I don't want to get it wrong. Oh,
I'll edit this part out, don't worry.
okay, perfect. Okay. Okay. Um, so before going eh, into that, I just really want to uplift. Demi Lovato did a documentary
Mhm.
that is available on Hulu called Child Star. And I watched it, I believe 3 weeks ago, maybe four. Um, Allison is also featured in it. And it was the most one of the most eye-opening and beautifully done documentaries that I have truly ever seen, especially on such a crucial topic like this. And seeing all of the children that I looked up to as a child myself. I will even go as far as to share with the world, actually, Allison was my inspiration when they were dancing with Missy Elliott. The way I feel about Beyonce and movement to her music today is the way I felt in the early 2000s with Missy, and watching Allison do something that I so wish I could do myself, and then now be in this shared community and space, and friend to see the importance of why um, they are choosing to integrate as an MHC and supporting child actors, because the autonomy, the lack of language and understanding, and what needs to actually be provided to them. um, we also had to get education in child trauma informed care as well. And I did that as well. And I have worked with children. I actually was a hip hop coach for 7 years after I left Millennium, um, and for children. And so, again, I digress, but I just want to identify, at least when you watch this documentary, I hope you take away the demand that is asked of these children. And now we are watching uncharted territory with children on social media and not having those barriers and the laws and everything that needs to be into place to protect them. Because there are laws that are in place for child actors in Hollywood. Now, with that being said, though, there is so much more need and support and care that absolutely has to happen. And I often think about, obviously spaces like Disney and Nickelodeon, but going as far as watching children in like A24 films, horror films, um, really emotionally dark charged, stories. I think back then to the 70s, and like The Exorcist, like the dynamics that when we're talking about mental health, like it can be applied to so many different areas and things, right? But again, it's just I could go off again about mental health coordination, so I'm just going to stop myself there. I just keep saying that over and over again.
I absolutely love it, and I love the aspect of the mental health coordination, especially in those, highly crucial and vulnerable places. And speaking of vulnerable, Celene, we'll wrap up this podcast episode, but you did something that is very, very deep and very, hard to do. And you wrote a letter to your younger self. And
Yes.
one
Hmm.
of the last things and one of the last questions that I have for you is, are you able to read the letter to yourself for this podcast?
Yeah, I think I should. Like,
Absolutely. And I
okay,
want
let me pull it up. Okay.
and
Let's see.
and I'll edit this part out too, don't worry.
Okay, I'm like, sorry for the long pause.
No, you're good. You're fine.
Okay, take a sip of water first.
And before you start reading,
Yeah,
take a deep breath, because this is a very harrowing, and
yeah,
I know there's going to be emotions behind it, but I want to
yeah.
acknowledge that. Take your time.
Thank you. That's so kind of you. Thank
Take
you for your
time
offer.
right now
Yeah.
to do a deep breath. Take a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out,
Hmm.
and then reground. And are you ready?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
ready.
let's go ahead.
Dear 18-year-old Celene, you grew up in privilege in many ways. Safe neighborhoods, good schools, never really feeling fear. But none of that prepared you for what came next. A month and a half into college, your life changed. You were drugged and raped. Everything stopped making sense. You thought this was what college was supposed to be, because that's how it looked in the movies: messy parties, blurred lines, chaos. But this was never your fault. You didn't have the words, you didn't have the understanding, you didn't know what was happening or how to ask for help. You deserved to be protected. You deserved to be believed. You deserved to be cared for. I know you'll do things and feel things that won't make sense for years. You'll carry pain that doesn't belong to you. You'll wonder if it was something you did, but I promise you it wasn't, and it's going to be okay. From ashes, you will rise. Your voice will become your freedom. You will fight for others in the name of justice because your heart is bigger than you know. Trauma may have shaped us, but we are reclaiming the narrative. We are using our voice, our truth, and our knowledge to educate others. We are defining empathy. We are demanding trauma-informed care. You are doing everything in your power to protect those who are willing to speak their truths while still holding our earliest wounds with compassion and the intention to heal. Healing is possible. You are doing all the work to make sure your daughter and the many children in this world grow up in a society where they are believed and protected. That is why you are fighting, and you are doing it beautifully and unapologetically. I love you so very much. Celene.
I want to acknowledge how incredibly powerful the words are that's in this letter to 18-year-old Celine. And I know for a fact that 18-year-old Celine would be very fucking proud of you.
Oh, yeah. No idea. I think I would pass
I
out.
absolutely. And to anybody out there who is listening, please know that you are never alone in this
Yeah.
world. You have survivors, you have advocates, you have mental health coordinators that are
Mm-hmm.
here to be a support to you. And we're shifting our content, and Selena's shifting her content. And I know a lot of other survivors, like my co-founder Gwen, uses her rage and uses her passion as a
Yes,
survivor.
friend. Yes, girl.
She just came out with a
Mm-hmm.
song called Lighter, which is available on all streaming platforms. Another shameless
Mm.
plug, but it
Yes.
is a survivor anthem because it takes
Mm.
such passion to use your voice,
Mm-hmm.
be vulnerable, and help other
Mm-hmm.
people get to that point of healing. And, this kind of goes into like a future podcast episode where me and another content creator sit down and we talk about decolonization of self-care. And
Mm.
it's very
Oh,
deep and very, there's a lot
oh, I
to it
love this.
and there's a
Yeah.
lot to unpack. And
Mm.
Celine, I love you beyond,
I love you. Oh my
I
gosh.
do.
Right back
Um,
at you. Also, can I just acknowledge you for like 2 seconds though? Because I would like to just hold a moment and also just let everybody know, like, a little behind the scenes, just that. So when Zachary and I connected, um, we talked about you coming on the podcast and we did our pre-interview, and everything in your pre-interview, like, was almost drastically different than what your interview came out to be. And I learned so much more in your interview. And it is with great pride that that exists in the world, and it's in the space that was curated and created for you. And knowing that you felt safe and you felt heard and validated, um, in my space was really important. And so it is a great honor that I'm doing this now, being interviewed. And it's so funny, like, for us to flip the script, and I love it. And you did a fabulous job, mind you. But I'm just, again, between you and Gwen and Mercedes and Amelia, like, the heart is there. You're making change. You're making a difference. I mean, you got Miss Rachel's attention. Like, there is no bigger, better badass than Miss Rachel, who I just love and adore. Um, but sincerely, right? Like, we are moving through really murky, scary waters, and every day is just a giant question mark and like bracing ourselves, I feel like. So just knowing again that you have created this community, this coalition of advocates, and coming together using our voices, identifying where we need more support. It's it's been so transformative, and um just being able to engage and meet so many different people. It's just a beautiful gift that you have offered, and all of you, and your vulnerability, and just, again, making safe spaces for people where it doesn't feel very safe right now. So thank you.
Absolutely, and a part of this podcast is to give that platform and the voice to people who do not have one. And I have had the utmost privilege at interviewing some of the most incredible human beings in just the last month that we've been doing this
Mhm.
podcast. And I have to say there are some very hard-hitting conversations that will be coming out on this podcast that have never been shared
Mm,
before.
yep.
And there are some really incredible people that I'm sitting down and having the distinct honor of interviewing, but it's never been about the publicity. It's never been about, reaching almost 190,000 followers on social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's been just the stories that I've accumulated for Storytelling Collective, which, for those of you who don't know, these interviews are all a part of a storytelling collective. And it ranges from anybody who's talked about mental health to suicide to sexual assault to rape to
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence, growing
Mm-hmm.
up in a cult, religious trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and then also, talking to people who have been through conversion therapy, like myself, and
Yes.
people
Yes.
who have been on the front lines, fighting back against the fascist regime and fighting against um, a number of different, hard hitting issues in our country and across the
Yeah.
world, even. I mean,
Yeah.
but all of that to say, I'm grateful. It's very
Yes.
hard work to sit down and listen to these stories. But at the end of the day, I also feel a sense of joy and I feel a sense of relief knowing that
Mm-hmm.
these stories are going to finally get the attention that they deserve and they
Mm-hmm.
will be heard. I am an advocate and an absolute fighter for justice. It's not just in
Mm-hmm.
our name,
Mm-mm.
but we are a grassroots movement of sexual and gender-based
Mm-hmm.
violence survivors that are coming together to fight back against oppression in all forms and fight for justice and fight back against injustice that our communities
Mm-hmm.
are facing even now.
Yep.
Celine,
Amen.
if
Mm, of
there's one last question, I know I said that I had like that last question for you to read your letter,
course.
but there's one more question. If you could give advice to a survivor who is coming forward for the very first time, what would you
Mm,
tell them and
mm,
what would you recommend that they
mm,
do for their self-care, for their mental health, and
yeah.
yeah, what would you do?
So, first and foremost, brave, courageous, vulnerable, powerful, selfless act in breaking your silence and sharing your story and revealing your truth. Know that you are allowed to curate your own boundaries. You don't owe anybody details. You can very much say what you are willing to speak to. And I encourage you to think about your boundaries. I also encourage you to try to connect with other silence breakers and maybe ask them about their experiences too, if they're willing to share. Um, it is, like I said, a selfless act that does come with repercussions. Um, but I always find the strength in my fellow survivors around me, those who are still standing from breaking their silence. Um, it fuels my survivor energy, inspiration cup, all the things when I see survivors using their platforms and their voices, speaking up for things they care about, things that we need to know about. We will all never know collectively what we have all gone through, but I firmly believe that like when we are within community and sharing space and striving towards equality, autonomy, safety, it can be a very beautiful thing, but it can be very dark and it can be very hard. I also highly encourage you to ensure that you have some form of mental health care. Um, there are, sliding scale opportunities, like looking for those resources. Again, like identifying communities like MTMV Community Network Support Group. Again, online, there are wonderful, amazing people and advocates that can steer you in the right direction. But it is so important that you are also protecting your brain. in that process. Because as I shared, the very first time I told my story, I re-traumatized myself so badly and had no tools, had no idea that was even going to happen. And it really had its adverse effects. But I want people to learn from where I had to learn and educate myself. So finding that very much needed support and somebody who is trauma informed. And then third, self-care. It is a process, and making time and space for self-care is so, so important. Even if you are low on funds, you can find grounding techniques. Yeah, even just putting your feet on some grass, literally touching grass. It's a somatic experience and practice, and really allows you to get outside of your body. Please check out my social media, and I do provide information and care practices. But even thinking about the little things that you can do for yourself, yeah, and maybe even crafts, whatever you can get your hands moving. Or if, again, just think about all the ways to care to your senses. Drink your water, make sure you are fed, but allow yourself to process the process of going through sharing your story. And it is a process. Making sure that you are in a safe space, meaning, is this an appropriate time? Are you mentally in a space that you can sit with what comes within? Because, like I said, I will never downplay it and I will never sugarcoat it. It is very difficult. Shifting to having your name be out there and tied to an abuser or an institution, um, it's hard. It's really hard, because I understand and now recognize that my name is forever tied to my abusers, to an institute that didn't give a flying fuck about me, um, and everyone else that, came before all that. But anyway, I digress. Like I said, just understand what comes with all of it. Nurture yourself, find your people, let your people know that checking in on you, if that is something that you would like, let them know that. Let them know, hey, it would feel good maybe if you just checked in on me, or maybe we can go out and do something together. But community is important during these times, and really reaching out and feeling all the things, because big feelings are okay. And it's okay to have big feelings. There you go. Thank you, Miss Rachel.
I remember the day that Miss Rachel followed the movement, and I freaked out so
Oh, I do too.
hardcore. And the work that she's doing, around the world
Hmm.
for children, and recognizing, children in Gaza, and recognizing, everything that's like going on. And she's just this bright, bubbly personality that I never knew I needed in my life. And I'm not even a child. And whenever I tell
Well,
you
yeah.
that she inspires me to keep going,
Yes.
and just
Can
her
I just
inner,
quickly uplift, though, from a mom
yes,
perspective too?
yes,
Because she has been the third parent from very early on.
for so
Um,
many.
for so many. One of my previous producers, Brittany Waterford, when she found out I was pregnant, she's like, two words, Miss Rachel. And then she was like, you're welcome. I was like, okay. So, yeah, just first of all, the representation that Miss Rachel has offered to children is one of the most beautiful things. And for it to be on YouTube and free and accessible warms my heart even more. The trans representation, the accessibility that is provided, the education on sign language, um, and then the musicality. Mr. Aaron, her husband, Aaron Caruso. I don't know. You can edit that out. So I can't remember what his last name is. Curso, Aaron Curso, I think. Anyway, so he is like a music writer for Broadway. And so a lot of the music is rooted in that kind of melody, and so it's catchy. And you also have Miss Rachel, who is an incredible educator who also has masters. Could not tell you like exactly what her degrees are in, but it's all rooted in child education. And everything is science backed that she is doing. So the high pitched voice, like I know parents are always like, I can't stand the voice. Okay, I understand. Now, with that being said, there's a purpose and there's a reason for it. And just by identifying those educational practices that she's providing to parents along the way, I mean, I can't, my child is almost 2.5, and she is so emotionally intelligent, and the rate that she's speaking, and I attribute a lot of that to Rachel. And again, and just the representation that she is providing. I do see a lot of criticisms. I know she received a wave of backlash. Um, but she's always uplifting children regardless. And just like you said, her drive and determination when it comes to Gaza is so admirable. And I have not seen a single celebrity even remotely come close to the advocating and the care and uplifting stories of some of these children. And even though it is hard to take in and digest, it is so crucial and it is so important for us to recognize, again, as a mother, and watching her um, stand up for what she believes and is really not backing down. I mean, talk about an advocate. I mean, just truly, she's doing so much and she puts so much out there, and there is so much care, and I can see it in her heart, and I can see it through her um gifts that she's providing to children, everywhere with these YouTube videos. I mean, my nephew came over recently, and I don't believe he had ever seen Miss Rachel, and he was so locked in, and he kept asking me, "Who is this? Who is this?" And I kept laughing, because it just was a reminder that she just captures the room, especially for children, and she does it in a way that is so informative and educational. And what a beautiful human being. And she's so needed right now for our kids. It breaks my heart. Just again, just my anger with this administration. And so just to, at least, especially when we're talking about the erasure of the trans community, and seeing that representation for my daughter to understand and to learn that now is so important to me. And I just, again, as you can see, she's truly one of my biggest heroes. And what an honor when you texted me and said she started following you, and I just broke down into tears. So no surprise there.
I I have to agree. And I was on the receiving end of her following, and I just
Yeah,
froze because I was like,
yeah,
I know I have a lot of friends, that I went to high school with and have kids now, and they just look up to her so incredibly much.
yes.
And she is literally the definition and the embodiment of an
Mm-hmm.
absolute hero. And,
Mm-hmm.
it goes into her being the next generation's
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Ah, bless that
And
man.
it literally opens my eyes so much. I'm not alone in a lot of the feelings that I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in all honesty, I can just sit here and listen to her voice, and it's therapy for me. Um,
Genuinely.
and she's
Mm-hmm.
not even talking to me. Well, I mean, in technicality, she is. She's talking to all of us because we all
Yeah.
need to do better as a society and recognizing that our systems are failing our future generations. And whenever we invest in the future generations, they become our next leaders.
Yeah.
And that is what she's doing. She wants to, focus on the human approach to helping save lives of those who are vulnerable and cannot offend for themselves. Like that is what embodiment means. That
Yeah.
right there is the decolonization of self-care in itself.
Exactly.
and bringing back that community approach to the self-care aspect.
Yes.
And I could ramble about this all day, but
Same.
all that to say, Celene, thank you so much for coming on
Thank you
our
for having me.
podcast. This will
Of
be one of
course.
many conversations.
Please. Yes.
And, you always
Thank
have
you
an
for
open
having me.
invite. So, with
Mm,
that, thank you everybody for listening. Be sure to follow True Crime in Hollywood and Celene Beth Olsen on social media. And Celene, thank you so
thank you,
much.
my friend. Love you.
Love you.